June 6th, 1984. It was 40 years after the invasion of Normandy. To commemorate that day and those men, President Ronald Reagan went to the very spot where a group of Army Rangers scaled 100-foot cliffs under intense enemy fire and, as he put it, helped end a war. The president spoke in front of some of those very Rangers, and here is a portion of that address considered by some to be one of the great speeches in modern history.
Here in Normandy, the rescue began. Here the Allies stood and fought against tyranny in a giant undertaking unparalleled in human history. Their mission was one of the most difficult and daring of the invasion: to climb these sheer and desolate cliffs and take out the enemy guns. The Allies had been told that some of the mightiest of these guns were here, and they would be trained on the beaches to stop the Allied advance. These are the boys of Pointe du Hope. These are the men who took the cliffs. These are the champions who helped free a continent. And these are the heroes who helped end a war. 40 summers have passed since the battle that you fought here. You were young the day you took these cliffs. Some of you were hardly more than boys with the deepest joys of life before you. Yet you risked everything here. Why? Why did you do it? Well, what impelled you to put aside the instinct for self-preservation and risk your lives to take these cliffs? What inspired all the men of the armies that met here? We look at you and somehow we know the answer. It was faith and belief. It was loyalty and love. The men of Normandy had faith that what they were doing was right, faith that they fought for all humanity, faith that a just God would grant them mercy on this beachhead or on the next. It was the deep knowledge, and pray God we have not lost it, that there is a profound moral difference between the use of force for liberation and the use of force for conquest. You were here to liberate, not to conquer, and so you and those others did not doubt your cause, and you were right not to doubt. You all knew that some things are worth dying for. One's country is worth dying for, and democracy is worth dying for because it's the most deeply honorable form of government ever devised by man. All of you loved liberty. All of you were willing to fight tyranny, and you knew the people of your countries were behind you. Here in this place, where the West held together, let us make a vow to our dead. Let us show them by our actions that we understand what they died for. Let our actions say to them the words for which Matthew Ridgway listened: I will not fail thee nor forsake thee. Strengthened by their courage, heartened by their value, and borne by their memory, let us continue to stand for the ideals for which they lived and died. Thank you very much, and God bless you all.
Peggy Noonan served as special assistant to President Reagan, and they worked on that speech together. She joins me now live. Peggy, great to see you. You still get chills when you listen to that. And
yeah, actually.
The way he brought those very men sitting before him to tears, and he said later about it that they looked like elderly businessmen sitting there that day, yet these were the kids who climbed the cliffs. Mm-hmm. This was one of the first times that a president in modern history had stopped and paid this sort of tribute, amazingly, to what we now know as the greatest generation.
Yeah, President Reagan was very eager to celebrate the old fellows who had been young boys 40 years before, who had taken those cliffs, who were members of the U.S. Army Rangers. President Reagan wanted very much to sort of get his hands around and lift up a generation that until that point had not been completely specifically celebrated as this wonderful generation that fought and won World War II, 16 million of them, served in the U.S. Armed Forces during World War II, and who also got through the Depression before that. So that was some of the vibration that was behind the speech.
And he had been, before he was president, our viewers know he had been governor of California.
Sure.
In the late 60s and early 70s, at a time when, treatment of veterans in the country coming back from Vietnam, the Vietnam conflict itself was, very heated and very controversial.
Yeah.
And he wanted to send a message about our military and our veterans.
Absolutely. That speech, the Pointe-Hoc speech, took place in 1984, 10 years before, in 1974. The Vietnam War had ended, and the members of the U.S. military were not being treated with so much respect and hadn't really gotten their due from the people of the United States. For almost a generation, Reagan was determined to turn that around. He had great respect for those who'd fought in Vietnam. He felt they had not been fully appreciated. He was governor when the prisoners of war, the Hanoi Hilton fellows, when the U.S. prisoners of war from Saigon and elsewhere were finally freed, it was Reagan who came and welcomed them and had them over to the governor's mansion. He was keen on getting greater appreciation for the U.S. military from the American people, and he succeeded.
And yet that speech, as much as it's known for the tribute that it paid to the veterans at the time, is also known for being very clever, because at the time, it was 1984, we were in the middle of the Cold War, and it was also, it was a speech within a speech. Explain that.
The text of the speech, the ostensible thing that was being said was, look, civilized nations of the West, look what you did 40 years ago when you held together, joined together, you defeated a terrible tyranny called Hitler's Germany. So that's what the speech is. Underneath that, Reagan was really saying to all the gathered leaders of the West who were there that day, guys, look what your parents and grandparents did. If we hold together as they did, we are going to defeat together the tyranny of our time, and that is Soviet communism. So by lauding the World War II generation, Reagan was also trying to inspire those who now still had to hold together. The Berlin Wall had not fallen, to push that wall over. So he very consciously, I think, used that speech to say, look what we did last time, we can still do it.
The words are so beautiful when you hear him speak them, and of course he was known as the great communicator, and you helped with that. You helped with the wording. Did he ever come back and say, I nailed that one? Did you ever have a post-mortem on the addresses that he gave and how they went?
Ronald Reagan was funny. You would think, having been in show business, having been in politics for a long time, that he would talk that way. I nailed it. I own that room. Stuff like that.
Yeah, a little bit.
No, he never did, or not that I ever saw. Reagan was amazingly modest. He had a lot of humility, and he didn't brag about his ability to get people. When people listened to him and they felt as he did, he felt that was because he felt like they did. Do you know what I mean? He felt there was a kind of communion going on. But he didn't brag. He was a fellow who had an ego, who didn't brag.
He is very missed by many people today, Peggy. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.